Hello and welcome to this Climate Watch video. In today's video we are going to talk about the increase in heavy rainfall events which correlates with increased flooding. Most recently, Hurricane Ian made landfall in Florida, followed by South Carolina. This headline from Bloomberg really states it quite well. Climate change infused Hurricane Ian with 10% more rain, scientists say. Well, I tend to agree with that. If we take a look at this map here, you can see here's Florida, here's Tampa Bay, here's where Ian made landfall. You can see an unprecedented amount of rainfall fell with Hurricane Ian. 15 to 20 inches were common in some areas, with the majority of other areas seeing anywhere from 6 inches up to 12 plus inches of rain. And even out here in the Atlantic Ocean, radar estimates over 20 inches of rain fell in some places. Then there was another jackpot where anywhere from 4 to 8 inches of rain fell in South Carolina, with a small area near Charleston that received over 10 inches of rain. And the effects of Ian is still occurring here in the mid-Atlantic states, as the energy has now formed a coastal system, and so far 3 to 5 inches of rain have fallen, with more rain yet to come. So when we look at the overall country, we see the observed change in heavy rainfall precipitation. As you can see, it's pretty evident across the majority of the country, with exceptions to Hawaii and slightly less out on the west coast. However, despite how dry it is on the west coast, we have noted that when they see rainfall events on the west coast, there tends to be more frequent mudslides because they tend to get a lot of rain at once. And when you get a lot of rain at once on very dry ground, it does tend to cause flash flooding. You can see northwest region 12% change, in the north central region 16% change, Great Lakes 37% change, southeast 27% change, the northeast 71% change, which is where the biggest change has been, and 11% change in Alaska. So the map basically shows the percent increases regionally in the amount of precipitation falling in heavy events defined as the top 1% of all daily events from 1958 to 2012. If we fast forward this to today, the increase is probably even more noticeable in the Northeast, just because of how many flooding events have occurred in the past decade. Now on this map we take a look at the frequency of river flooding. As you can see, there are some areas that really stand out. Remember how we showed the big increase in the Northeast for heavy rainfall events? Well, that coincides with a significant increase in flooding events. Take a look at all these flooding events, especially in Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maine, even out here in the Ohio Valley. There's been an increase in flooding events, but there's also a mix in decreased. And there's some of them out in the west where the rivers flooding has dropped a little bit. As you can see here along the Appalachians, river flooding is not as frequent, but for the large majority, there is an increase in flooding events. And we're going to take a look at some of these flooding events. So here we go. Floods in the United States 2000 to present. You may remember some of these storms. And if we go down here, just starting off with the early 2000s, Hawaii had flooding in 2000s from Tropical Storm Paul. And then in 2001, Allison generated flooding in Texas, which that was pretty bad. Allison actually continued, and the remnants actually made it all the way up in here to the mid-Atlantic. Then in 2005, there happened to be flooding in Los Angeles. Then who can remember who cannot forget in 2005 the flooding that occurred in New Orleans? Look at this. Hurricane Katrina. Thankfully, Hurricane Katrina has not been matched since. There have been landfalls there, but the levees have been able to keep up thanks to improvements. Continuing down here, Oregon and Washington, they had significant flooding that occurred. Along Interstate 5 was closed, and portions of Interstate 5 was damaged in 2007. Then we come to the 2010s, and there was massive flooding in Tennessee in May of 2010. If we read here, The May 2010 Tennessee floods were a 1,000-year floods in the middle of Tennessee, western Tennessee, central and western Kentucky, and northern Mississippi as a result of torrential rains on May 1st and May 2nd, 2010. Floods from these rains affected the area for several days afterwards, resulting in 31 deaths and widespread property damage totaling $2.3 billion. So are you starting to see where I'm coming from here? This is a significant deal, and it's happening more frequently. 2011, the Missouri River had a significant flood. Then, spring of 2011, the Mississippi River flooded. Then there was Tropical Storm Lee. Who could not forget Tropical Storm Lee? We're actually going to click on the map here. Tropical Storm Lee dropped upwards of 10 inches of rain along the Gulf Coast, but then there was a second very impressive area from Virginia up through Pennsylvania that dropped 10 to 15 inches of rain, and it caused significant flooding along the Susquehanna River, floods that haven't been seen since Hurricane Agnes back in the 1970s. So that was a very impressive event. And continuing along here, there were several more impressive events, including the Carolinas, which had a significant flood in 2018, a combination of storm surge and rainfall over 2.5 feet in some parts of North Carolina when Hurricane Florence stalled over southeastern North Carolina, led to severe flooding, with some rivers cresting almost 2 weeks after Florence's rainfall. And also another one that is here it is, Harvey. Hurricane Harvey dumped an impressive amount of rainfall. See this pink area here, this real kind of bright pink? Yeah, that's nearly 50 inches of rain that fell in the Houston area from Hurricane Harvey, which is just completely unheard of. And that's some of the highest rainfall amounts ever recorded in a country. So you can see here, in the 2010s, it's happened even more frequent. But as we get closer, let's go back to last year. Hurricane Ida. Ida was pretty significant, and most notable here in the mid-Atlantic. It caused significant flooding. Ida, as you take a look here, this is in Philadelphia. The Schuylkill River flooded out, and it blocked the drain system, so the infrastructure essentially failed, and I-676, which is called the Vine Street Expressway, completely flooded out. Check this out. This is something that has never had happened before, but because the infrastructure could not keep up with the surge of water, thanks to being blocked by how much rain fell in Schuylkill River, it backlogged into the Vine Street Expressway. It also shut down the Long Island Expressway because the drainage system could not keep up with the amount of rainfall. So in conclusion here, heavy rainfall events are becoming more frequent. Heavy rainfall events are becoming much more severe. And with that, the infrastructure, drainage systems, are not able to keep up with the rate of rainfall, with today's rainfall rates. They were designed for the rainfall rates of yesterday, which is very problematic. And this is going to continue to get worse over time unless we invest billions of dollars into helping to fix the drainage problems. But that's not going to solve the overall problem, that the volume of water that rushes through rivers during heavy events, it's going to be more frequent, and we're going to see more widespread river flooding. So if you live in the area of a river or a reservoir, you might be in big trouble. You might want to consider moving, simply because infrastructure, especially like these reservoirs, they're not going to be able to handle. Like dams are going to overflow because we know the climate is warming, and with warmer climate, you get heavier rainfall rates because the atmosphere holds more moisture. And with it holding more moisture, rainfall rates are heavier, and we're seeing more rainfall in a short amount of time. We've seen plenty of examples. I just showed you plenty of examples. And this is going to continue, and it's going to continue to become more frequent. I expect the 2020 to 2030 era to have more frequency of this than we saw in 2010 to 2020, which had a higher frequency than 2000 to 2010. So that about does it for today's video. Remember, always stay weather aware. Flooding is one of the leading causes of death when it comes to weather disasters. So always seek higher ground if you know you're going to be in a flooding event, and if you live along a river, start preparing now, because the frequency of flooding, especially in the northeastern states, as we saw, like with storms like Irene, Ida, and so on, it does cause significant flooding. In fact, Irene did millions of dollars in damage in the state of Vermont. Alright, thanks for watching this video. We'll see you again next time.